And I think for me, AI is just intelligence implemented, additional intelligence implemented in any kind of device you can imagine. And we need to go away from the thinking, oh, AI is NVIDIA chip, because the NVIDIA is a $40,000 to $60,000 chip.
Yeah.
But there are so many other special purposes. Even, for example, companies like Renaissance, like MCU, they also put in kind of AI intelligence. They have other chips additionally in there. They build a whole ecosystem. It's fascinating. And as you mentioned, we are just in the beginning in this cycle. And that's a much, much bigger upcycle than smartphone ever was, and that notebooks or PC market was. AI is outpacing this for decades.
Good morning and welcome to another Making It Happen podcast by SIMS International, where we talk about multiple topics across the technology landscape, including some fascinating insight around the memory world. And today I'm delighted to be joined again by Marco Mezger, who, amongst being an authority in the memory space and heavily followed influencer on the LinkedIn around the space, is also a very close friend to SIMS and the company. So delighted to be joined by you today, Marco, where we're going to discuss maybe over the next 20-25 minutes, several key topics, because it's been a little while since we've done an update, right? So welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I'm very happy to be back on the show.
Excellent. And we always really appreciate it. And I guess timing's quite good at the moment, right? Because we're in a fast-paced industry as it is, but I would suggest that the rate of pace is the fastest it's ever been, and it continues to increase with so much volatility and uncertainty around supply, demand, and also innovation. There's a lot happening there. So I've got a bunch of different topics that we can probably talk about. In any particular order, I'll let you choose which your preference is. So I'd like to get to, at some point, talking about DDR and memory, so DDR4, DDR5, DDR6. I'd also like to talk about some of the rumors we're hearing around substrate component shortages that are affecting NAND. We've obviously got a huge bunch of stuff around tariffs that are happening at the moment that's impacting supply. And I guess, lastly, just to understand from your perspective, just reminding myself the impact that things such as HBM will have on the future and any future technologies around innovation. So over to you. I mean, where do you want to start?
If we start with DDR, probably, we will not have time for the other topics of the show.
Sure, fine.
So,
That could be a separate one.
but I think on a broader space, you mentioned the market is good. I would say the market is challenging right now. It needs companies like SIMS. It needs companies who are experts in certain segments, in niches. Because what we have seen in the last couple of months on memory, comparing to the last few years ago, is quite tough for a lot of customers, right? So we have sudden EOLs, sudden changes in product allocation. We have limited supply. We starting this allocation. And now it's not like the usual one, what we had like the last 2 years, which was basically HBM and high density DDR5. Now we're also tickling through to more like DDR4 and potentially also having an impact on DDR3. As you know, in the memory industry, it's not only the memory industry, but in general, it's about how much you get per wafer. Yeah, how much you get per wafer, and then actually the wafer price is determined by what is the demand for the chip, right? So if you have a smaller process node, especially when you look into HBM, you need newer cutting edge technologies. You make the TSVs, you package the goods together. And then at the end of the day, you can get a very high premium because it's in a very high demand. But in reality, the customer base for these type of products is very limited. Yeah? Data center, cloud guys, a lot of them are in the US, very much restricted. But for example, on DDR4 and other technology, there's a strong embedded industrial market, especially you are also based in Europe. There's a lot of customers who are using this type of technology, even some in the server area using still some DDR4. It's not very
Yeah.
uncommon. Of course, they will transition. But what really happened is like that all of the big guys are going out there at the moment, Samsung, Micron, SK Hynix, and they were betting a little bit on the Chinese, on CXMT and Giga device. But they also want to make more money on their wafer. So they also want basically rather forget about DDR4 and let's go to DDR5 and beyond. And so that's where we are right now. And I'm sure you see this also from your customers. They are seeking for help, right? They say, hey, who will still be there? Where can I work with you together? And so I think within the Neumonda group, for example, we have intelligent memory where you also work together. And they are normally more focusing on these legacy products and not like on the high end, right? So I think you need to have in memory both areas covered in order to help customers.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, like you, we probably saw and felt the announcements of the three major semiconductors, Micron, Hynix, and Samsung exiting the market on DDR4 at the same time. Obviously, then there was a market reaction. So prices increased dramatically, and some instances 2, 3x. And
Yes.
then, like you say, the knock-on effect after that has been that's okay. So what happens on our workplace or on our consumer or on our server products? But now the knock-on effect has been actually, and how does this impact those that require long-term availability, where it isn't just so quick to transition to a newer platform, as an example? And that's really a
Mhm.
lot of the questions we're being asked now, and that's where obviously the likes of intelligent memory, for example, come into that because they do have that life cycle and that supply cycle in place to help us. But it's been a very strange time, and from a customer perspective, there's a lot of uncertainty because there's still pockets of product, and
Yes.
it seems like all hopes on the Chinese-led manufacturers semiconductors of being still able to serve that have moved recently because, as you say, I think the Chinese government are pressing them to go after the leading edge technologies. So there seems to have been a quite dramatic shift in a very small space of time.
Yeah, and I think if you look at it, I think what we see right now is also because a lot of customers panic, right? So this
Yeah,
means like, there's double orders, double booking, and that's also not good. I just had recently with EE Times an interview where I said, okay, let's please put some common sense back into purchasing. And especially when you are a distributor and you're supporting the industry, you need to have visibility, right? And you need to have honest visibility because you go to your suppliers. I think you have also multiple suppliers that you basically try to secure. And then if customers basically placing with you, with others, and on, you're saying, wow, so much demand, And then the manufacturer thinks like, wow, and check up the prices. And then later you find out these are like double bookings. And
yeah.
this is, I mean, I work in the industry 30 years. I think, Kevin, no offense, but I think you also work pretty long in the industry.
It's been a while. Yes, correct.
So I think you probably would agree with me that we have gone through this cycle quite often, and every time people say, "Oh, this time is different." No, it's not different. It's not different. It's the same.
Yeah, and that's one of the challenges we have, right? It's because we understand it from the customer's perspective that they've likely got multiple sources, and there is an element of panic. And if these things typically, customers don't work to plan so far in advance. So when these type of things happen very quickly, the natural thing to do is to spread your bets and put as many orders in as many places to try and see if you can secure product. But as you say, probably upstream, the problem is it then creates this false demand situation, which then compounds the issue rather than fixing it. So yeah, like you say, our advice is typically look, choose a partner, work with your partner, and communicate clearly with them and their partners. That's probably more likely to get you the result than it would be spread betting. Some instances, obviously, it's not possible.
Right. And
It,
we have a commodity, right? So we are selling
yeah,
a commodity. So this is normally also good for our customers because you can have one or two vendors, using the same socket. and having the opportunity to basically balance them out a little bit. I think the market will cool down after all these last time buy with the manufacturers have been done. We go back to normality. And I think especially the customers who have long-term plan for this, who don't plan to transition, right? Because
Yeah,
think about it, Kevin. Normally, we are talking, especially in some of the area where you are in the data centers, the high-end servers, and in this area, people traditionally they transition then when there's a price point reached where the new technology is more attractive and the CPUs are good available, then you would do the transition, right?
yeah,
And so when this is happening, these people can move. Other people who cannot move, I can also do giving some relief there. I think there are still multiple companies out there in the market who supply chips which can be used on modules or can be used as a single component. Supply will be there, but I think the
yeah.
current situation, which basically all started with this AI frenzy, we still have to deal with. Yeah? So I assume we had in first quarter, it was the first announcements of these EOLs. I know you do flash also, right? So you have also flash products. You have SSD, you have eMMC. So if
Correct.
you
Yeah,
remember, we had also the big challenge with MLC, eMFC from Samsung, where
yes.
you have like the low densities, the 4, 8, and the 16, which is a nightmare, which is a headache for a lot of people to find solutions there. So it's just like the concentration of these issues coming up all these years, where we had basically 2 years, you can say, outside of AI and data center was very slow, right? Because we still had the issues with COVID inventory levels. There was a lot of pressure on pricing. There was a terrible year for memory in 2023. 2024, it looked better, but mainly only because of AI, not of a broader recovery.
Yeah.
And this year, I felt like, hey, there's a broader recovery. You know, you see this, and then boom, all these challenges come basically up, and you need to go through.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think probably, as you say, we've both been in this industry a long time. And for me, the challenges are no different to what have always existed. However, I would say the pace of change is much higher than it's ever been. And actually,
Yes.
the volatility is much higher. I've never witnessed, as an example, 100% or 200% price increases within such a short space of time. We may have seen that happen as a product phases out from day one to year five. It may have moved up that, but not in a couple of months space
Mhm.
time. So I think probably for me, the biggest observation is it's really key that certainly those that are probably less able to migrate to different platforms and through different components and use different commodities, those that really rely on stable supply have a real handle on who it is they're working with, how they're working with them, and what options they have available to them, because these things are happening over a much shorter time span. And I expect that will continue because of the
Right.
rate of
And I think
innovation.
yeah, and as you asked in the intro, so we want to touch also a little bit on the other memory technologies, right? So DDR6 is on the horizon,
Yeah,
but I think it's not really out in the market yet. It's a natural thing. The new iteration of the DRAM technology is coming, and then people will chase this technology. I think you will need it also then for HBM4 and beyond. But one huge change, what we had in the past when we had like these lithography going down, right? The process node, how memory is produced. I mean, we hear always about this EUV technology. We always hear about the ASML machines. We hear about AI chips from NVIDIA or Apple chips like on 3 nanometer. On memory, we are not so small scale down. We are still double digit, like
yeah,
probably like 12 nanometer, 13 nanometer. But I think the the bit growth and the output is not so much anymore as kind it was before, because we have now with this technology, when you use HBM still a challenge is kind of the yield rates. You package the memory, they go very close to a GPU. Where they are there, and the premium what the manufacturers can charge is very high on this, comparing to a normal DIMM module, which goes in a server, right? So I think
yeah,
that's where they are looking forward to, and where there's also not so many competition. I mean, SK Hynix has done a stunning activity for me to see how they surpassed after over 20 years Samsung
I know.
in
Yeah.
the DRAM market. That's crazy.
Market leader within
Yes.
a short space of time.
Yeah.
And
I'm not sure how long they can hold it, Kevin. So
yeah, I mean,
because Samsung is working very hard to get back, very hard.
well, I think Samsung and Micron particularly have their eyes on the prize. I mean, from what I've
Yeah.
heard, it's expected to be a $36 billion market in the next few years.
Yeah.
It's currently around 10 to 12 maybe. So I think all three named companies will probably be fighting very aggressively over that market, which is great, generally speaking, for them as businesses. But I guess for us as channel businesses, that probably doesn't impact us so much, right? So I think we've just
No,
got to be very aware of what that means around the supply chain and what that means around
correct.
the technologies that are available to us, because the channel is half the market, generally speaking.
Right.
So if all the efforts are going into HBM, because that's the latest, most profitable and largest market, we've got to be really aware of what input or impact, I would say, that has then on product supply in the other areas.
Yeah, I think it's the key word there is product allocation, right? So
Yeah,
what is the product allocation for which segment, where they want to go in? And you know, I think on DDR4 it was very clear they rely that the Chinese will pick up this market, but they are not interested. They also want to move forward. And of course, they cannot talk to each other, right? Because then it would be a cartel, which is also not good. And when you have only three or four guys, it's
yeah,
already kind of an oligopoly, right? So I think in this way, our market has been very interestingly developed over the last 20 years, where you had like dozens of memory companies to basically shrink it down to three. And I think nowadays, I don't think that any of these companies could be filing bankruptcy. It's just not going to happen, right? A Micron would not be able, no matter how the market would go down, they always would be supported. The Koreans would be supported. CXNT is being supported by government. So we have a very settled market. And then
yeah,
we have also some players in Taiwan. You know, you have a PowerChip, you have a Nanya, you have a Winbond who are there, you have Macronics. So they are still in the ecosystem. Other players, they find their way to give customers some peace that they are around. And I think that's also good to know for everyone, right? Because normally when we talk about memory to most of the people, it's a lot of server, it's a lot of PC. I think low power DRAM could be something where we also can talk about. This is taking over very strong from traditional DRAM. You have now memory modules based on low power DRAM, which is being used. And that's also like a very fast memory technology, which can deploy it, for example, what I call edge AI or AI everywhere. Yeah? You will
yeah,
see much, much more technology and AI besides the data center guys, because this is only a few people who benefit from or who benefit and who can afford NVIDIA chips for 40 to $60,000.
yeah.
Most of the companies cannot afford this because there's no business model. But a $300 chip, a $500 chip, there are so many startups right now around the world. They make these special purpose AI chips. And I think this is very interesting because they will need low power DRAM, they need graphics DRAM, and other kind of memory solution.
Well, and I think that on its own could be a whole new topic for a whole new time, right? Because I think not just in the data center where cooling is obviously becoming very important and a very high growth area, you've then got also, as you say, at the edge where there are conversations that need to be had about how do we reduce power and obviously not only reduce power but increase whatever that edge device's performance and life cycle is. Because
Mhm.
ultimately, if it's at the edge, it's generally not powered in the same way. So it needs to be able to last off battery, as an example. So the lower the power, the more your application is in use, right? And the longer it's there for. So I think perhaps we'll speak to Drew, and maybe that'll be a separate topic at a different date because it is fascinating and it's only going in one direction, right?
Right, exactly, 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 absolutely.
All right, so just conscious on time. So I think we've probably covered a lot around DRAM. The only part, I guess, is quite a nice crossover. Do you see the DDR4 issues that we're facing at the moment around supply impacting flash? And what I mean by that is obviously we have a number of SSDs that require a DRAM buffer. Do you think we're likely to start to see problems there in supply, or do you think that the demands there is so small that it probably won't impact it so much?
I would not say it's so small, but it depends on which manufacturer you are, right? If you take this, the big three guys, right? You say SK Hynix with SK brand and Solidigm, you have Micron, you have Samsung. Of course, they make their own DRAM chips and they can internally allocate. So they should be okay, right? So in order to get this. And I think more and more SSDs are also DRAM less, right? So I think
Correct. Yeah.
you still have technology where you see this. I would still think in a broader picture, the volume, as you mentioned correctly, is probably not that significant in that market. So it's more like about priority. And I would still assume if you have a high density enterprise SSD with DRAM, of course you allocate the chips because you know also on flash pricing is also going up. And it's very funny, Kevin, because I think I just recently also had another discussion where at the end of 2023, a lot of the flash manufacturer announced, hey, we cut back supply, because pricing was basically going down. Then they cut back supply, Q1 price goes up. They were like, pricing is good. So we should release more parts. Boom, and pricing goes down again. Okay.
It-
At the end of last year, exactly the same. Oh, we will cut down 15%, Micron, all the usual suspects. And then basically price is going up again. I have not seen right now that they are releasing, but I predict that potentially we will see kind of the same pattern. Yeah, I think the yo-yo effect on Flash has been even more than, for example, on DRAM the last 2 years.
I agree. I think DRAM has been relatively predictable until the end of life notices. I think the end of life notices is what's changed that. I think it was just the nature of how they were delivered.
Right.
NAND flash, it seems like there's a constant supply and demand balance going on. And as I said, it used to take 4 years for these cycles to happen. It seems, as
Yes.
you've just mentioned there, it could be even quarterly at this rate. I mean, which amazes you when you consider how much investment and time and effort go into producing the yield and the costs that's associated, that these changes can have such a quick impact.
Right. And it's very interesting because a couple of years ago, it was pretty clear that from a market growth perspective, Flash would constantly be 1.5 times above the one from DRAM, or sometimes even 2 times. But since HBM came,
Yeah,
this changed. So there's some momentum again. And I think it's very interesting. If you look at companies like Micron has a bigger share of DRAM, right? I think they're probably, I don't know, 68, 70% DRAM. The rest is Flash. If you look at, for example, like a Kioxia, it's 100% Flash. They have no
yeah,
DRAM.
yeah,
They suffer a lot, right? I mean, at least when you have DRAM like Micron, SK Hynix, Samsung, they have some balance out. So if the DRAM party goes, they make some more money. If it goes down, they can balance it. But if you have only one, that's always a challenge. Yeah. So that's a tougher position.
yeah. The concentration risk is very high, right? Especially in such a
Yes.
volatile market. And I think as much as we all hope for supply and demand to continue growing in the space, and I think we're all probably agreed that it's only going one way. The size of the overall market is only going to increase. I think
Yes.
that the difficulty, as you say, is product allocation because what we've seen over the last 5 years is that go from the consumer at home using technologies, then into the workplace, then into the server, now into the edge. Like we're just seeing different trends that influence where that
Yes.
product allocation goes.
Yeah. And let me phrase this because I think it's good that you mentioned it. It's only going up, right? Because sometimes, especially the last 2 years, you could get a little bit depressive, right? If you see the market, right? So you
Yeah.
see this like, wow, man, this is not, there's only bad news, what's going on in the world. And so I have, especially when I go with Neumonda and I make a presentation, I have a slide. My first slide is always the happy slide. So when I feel really down or I go customer supplier said, this is the only slide I show always in the beginning. And the happy slide shows basically from the 1960s when semiconductor started until 2020, it took 60 years to go basically to 500 million, 500 billion, 500 billion revenue.
Yeah.
And it takes only 10 years from 2020 to 2030 to go to 1 trillion.
Yeah.
So just 10 years, think about the speed, right? And of course, in between, you have different commodities, they are different fast and they drop. I all understand, but
Yeah.
I know you and I, we work in the right industry. We work in semiconductor. It's a industry with a long-term growth. And for example, with AI, we are just in the beginning. At the moment, we are outside at the window and we're looking inside how a few companies are making all these opportunities selling to the cloud guys. So you
Yeah.
can just watch, you see how much they do. But the second wave, which when it goes tickle to a lot of other industrial special customer, other consumer customers, edge AI, this is where people will need companies like Sims to help them not only for one memory technology, not for two, but for all memory technologies to get the right understanding what they can choose and pick. And I think you are also, how long is Sims around in the market, Kevin? How long are you
So
are?
35 years.
35. Wow,
35
okay.
years. Yeah.
35. Yeah, similar like to the not some of the Neumonda companies. IM was also founded 1992. So I think it's in the same range. Yeah. So I think to survive so long in the memory market, you must do some good thing.
Well, I think you're right because it's not an easy space, but I think like
Yes.
you, I'm very much in the opportunity side of things. I think even as you've explained there, take AI at its base premise. Even for me as a user, as an individual, I have no doubt the capabilities that are going to be available to me through the various amount of tools that I'm going to be able to call on will help me output 4, 5, 6x what I currently do today. But to do that, the infrastructure and the systems and the equipment and the hardware that I need today is going to have to be built differently to cope with that. So even
Yes.
from me on a really basic level, I can see that this space is only going to grow and that's going to impact on the memory and storage side. And then when you start to take it to the cloud, the edge, machine learning, all of the much bigger data sets, you can imagine how quickly that's going to scale up as well. So I think it's exciting times. Whilst we haven't quite got to grips with exactly what AI is as a term, I think we're all beginning to understand its opportunity and what that may mean for all the relevant components. So I think we're in the right space. So
Absolutely.
your happy slide might have to change to 2 or 3 at the start.
Well, actually, I think SEMI last year in Japan, they said they are expecting from 2030 to 2040 to do another doubling. But then the doubling would be 1 trillion on top, right? So at the
Yeah,
moment, it's 500 billion in the 10 years and then 1 trillion. And I think for me, AI is just intelligence implemented, additional intelligence implemented in any kind of device you can imagine. And we need to go away from the thinking, oh, AI is NVIDIA chip, yeah, because the NVIDIA is a 40 to $60,000 chip.
yeah.
But there are so many other special purposes. Even, for example, companies like Renesas, like MCU, they also put in kind of AI intelligence. They have other chips additionally in there. They build whole ecosystem. It's fascinating. And as you mentioned, we are just in the beginning in this cycle, and that's a much, much bigger upcycle than smartphone ever was, and that notebooks or PC market was. AI is outpacing this for decades.
Totally agree. And I was at a conference recently where it was described as being stop looking at AI as the mobile phone as an example and the
Yeah.
smartphone and consider it more around electricity and then think about the
Yep.
possibilities of once you introduce electricity, it's going to have the same kind of effect. So I
That's
think
a very
like
good
you,
comparison.
very optimistic. I think it's really good for our space. And I think like you, working or understanding these technologies as deep as we can to be able to understand how they can then deliver impact and performance and benefit is probably going to be the tricky part. But that's where our experience hopefully comes in to help partners.
Excellent. Yes, absolutely. I fully agree.
Great. And then just quickly, I know that's kind of the bigger stuff, future visionary. I've heard rumors around substrate shortages that may be impacting certain suppliers for micro SD cards, SD cards, some of the other small form factor flash devices. Is this something you're aware of? I mean, it was only this week I've heard that, so relatively
Uh,
new.
Substrate and also packaging capacity in Taiwan. So I live in Taiwan, so I'm based
Yeah.
in Taiwan. So I heard this already before I was going on a trip to Europe. So I think this is happening. This is true. Some of it is also related because some of the big guys are consuming up all the capacity at some of the packaging houses and pushing out other vendors, other companies, and they need to find new places. So the substrate is kind of a raw material. This already started to push out 2 months ago. I think I've seen this already.
Yeah.
But another challenge is also the whole OSAT market, like the packaging market, right? So they also struggle with capacity. And if you have not forecasted and lined up, it's a much longer time to get the slot than it was probably in the beginning of the year. This is definitely something to watch.
And just so for anybody that's watching, this is very clear. What type of products will this affect, and what would be the likely impact? So are we talking micro SD, eMMC, SD cards, and then would the impact be extended lead times from maybe 4 weeks to 32 weeks, as an example?
So the 2 weeks is quite long, but I would say definitely you need to calculate probably with a 20 weeks lead time. 20
Yeah.
is like 5 to 6 months, something like this. This is probably more reasonable at the moment. So I think again, it boils back what we said in the beginning, right? Visibility. If
Yeah.
the customer is open with you and say, look, Kevin, this is my demand, this is what I need, this is what I can project. It's always, you cannot be accurate, but it's a difference if you need like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or a few thousand. Yeah, so
Yeah.
you need the people need to understand what do you need, and then you can kind of starting to allocate and tell your suppliers what you need. But you definitely are in a mode right now for this type of products, as we have been probably in an early stage at COVID, yeah, where you need to see that you plan ahead. So pick up the phone, the customers talk to you, and basically make something work.
I think you're right. And I think, as you say, if you're 80% right and 20% wrong in either direction, you've at least got a start in place rather than just being 100% wrong. Because if you haven't done it,
Exactly.
it's a lot harder to find, right?
Yeah, that's 100% wrong if you need
Yeah.
something. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. I agree with you.
Good
I
stuff.
agree with
Okay.
you.
Well, no, that's cool. Well, thank you. And I think from my side, we've pretty much covered everything that was on the list in a roundabout way, which is perfect. I guess final messages as we leave. Predictions for second half of the year around pricing for both NAND products and DRAM would be helpful. And then I guess at the end, once you've done that, just an update on what you've got going on in the second half of the year, if there's anything of note you want to
Mhm.
talk about.
No, I think well, we are in the second half now and it did not cool down right now. We are still trying to see and to digest all the news which come from the market, and everybody is kind of in a position how many of parts will be available, how much is basically kept in inventory and not released. So unfortunately, I have not so good news for the second half to say that we see a relief there. But I can tell you it's a very interesting journey to see if maybe some people reconsider their decision, because this could also change the whole market aspect again. But from a practical point of view, I would recommend to customers to look what is the real demand and then secure this type of demand instead of trying, to place many, many orders with different suppliers or distributors. But what they really should do, not only in this time, but in general, they should have at least a second source or even a third source available that they can play with it. Okay. I mean, that's
Yeah,
very
very
reasonable
sensible. Very
to do
sensible.
this. And, I have to tell you, sometimes also the manufacturers are happy about this, because then the burden is not only on them. I know in a downturn market, they want to be the only one, but you can really disappoint a customer very much if you don't deliver and if there's no second source.
Well, what you tend to see, and I totally agree with you, is what you tend to see is people want the maximum amount of business. They want to be the incumbent, of course they do, but actually not at the expense that companies will never work with them again because they're unable to help them on one occasion. So I think you're right. I think second, third sources absolutely vital. Be very clear with those partners about their position, because again, they will work with you as and when the opportunities arrive. I mean, I think anybody that's in that second and third state, if they're aware of that, they're not going to be building for you. But if they have a surplus, they'll be able to support. And the first place incumbent will sit there and recognize perhaps, there are ways that we need to work with these people that perhaps we need to consider, because there are other options there. And as you say, it may provide some relief.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Great.
and for
And
me,
then so
this. Mhm.
So sorry, apologies. So what have you got going on the second half of the year? What excitement is ahead for you?
Yeah, a lot of traveling, so back and forward. So we'll also be in the US, going to events there and looking
So will
for
you
the
do
market.
Flash Memory Summit? Will that be there?
No, I'm at a conference in Utah. It's a conference about the new technology evolving around AI and memory technology. Where I'm going, I cannot make Flash Memory Summit this year. I'm sure you go. You probably will go, right?
We have been in the few, have been in the past. I won't be going this year, I don't think, but I think we've
Okay.
definitely attended in the past.
Okay. Yeah, it's normally it's a big gathering once a year there. But then I will also travel in Asia. I see more customers. This is also now at the moment very important to talk to customers, understand what's going on, suppliers in Taiwan. So I love what I do, similar like you. It's all about memory. So getting an understanding and getting a grip how you can read the glass bowl because that's what we do, right? It's not that we are super smart and we can predict everything. We read a glass bowl and we need to find out what is the best way to do. Luckily, in our market, also for Neumonda, since we mainly targeting industrial specialty, is not these extremely high volumes that what you have in data center PC smartphones. So that's a different story. But our challenge is always to find these kind of longevity solutions and giving like secure of supply. And then, of course, also working with experts together like Sims, who has like a very broad memory understanding and understands where, for example, one of our companies is a good fit.
Yeah, and I think lots to be excited for. I think we've had a strong performance from a Sims perspective first half of the year, and we anticipate that to continue second half of the year. As you say, probably lots of releases around products coming out as well. So I think we're in for an exciting second half of the year. And just lastly, obviously you are a memory rock star. You are widely followed. If anybody that's
No.
seen this and would like to hear some of your expertise and authority in the space, what's a good place for them to learn from you? Is it to go onto your LinkedIn profile?
Yeah, so I'm not using any social media besides LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, this I'm using already for many years. That's where I daily post. I'm very focused on charts, on information. Semiconductor as a broader, but then of course all I try to find the freebies, the bits and pieces, what we can get about the memory market, what the companies are providing this or magazines, and so it is helpful to me. And I started this a couple of years ago to share with people. And as you said, so I have people they follow. Then I think I have 25 million views now per year on these posts. And I learn also other people in the industry through this. So it's work for me every day. I'm not making this from a monetary aspect. I have to do this anyway because I need to understand the market very well. And that's also why, for example, in Taiwan, I have a TV show, or I go sometimes on BBC or CNN to give some comments about certain markets. And so that would help me a little bit through the visibility from LinkedIn.
Makes sense. And to me, certainly an authority in the space. I can understand why you have 20 million or 25 million views because the content is excellent. So anybody watching this that doesn't follow, I'd recommend they go onto LinkedIn, find your profile page and start to subscribing to some of that news because it's fantastic. Um,
Thank you.
Marco, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure as always to see you. I hope to meet you in person again very soon, and look forward to our next episode where we talk about low power voltage memory solutions from the sounds of things.
Ah, low power DRAM. Good. All
Good
right.
man.
Excellent.
Take
Okay.
care.
All
Thanks very
right.
much. Cheers. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye bye. Cheers. Bye bye.